There comes a moment in your journey when you realize the power of your absence. You've been showing up consistently, emotionally, mentally, physically, always available, always responsive, always giving. But one day, something inside you shifts, not out of revenge, not out of anger, but because you finally realize that your presence has been taken for granted. That day, the day you disappear, not dramatically, but intentionally. Something powerful begins to unfold. You stop calling, you stop checking in, you stop carrying the weight of the connection on your back, and suddenly the silence speaks louder than any words ever could. The truth is, people don't notice how deeply you hold space for them until that space is gone. They don't notice the light you bring until they're left in the dark. And when you step back, not because you hate them, but because you love yourself more. That's when they start to feel the emptiness. They feel lost, not because you punished them, but because they no longer have the constant reassurance that you always gave freely. Disappearing is not running away, it's reclaiming your energy. And the moment you do, the dynamic changes forever. When you disappear, you stop begging to be seen. You stop extending your energy outward in hopes that someone will finally acknowledge your worth. You stop over-explaining, over-apologizing, and overextending yourself for the sake of being accepted, and for the first time in a long time, you begin to pull that energy back into yourself. That shift, subtle at first, is the start of reclaiming your power. It's not about making a dramatic exit or creating a scene. It's not about ghosting or punishing someone. It's about stepping away with intention, dignity, and self-respect. It's the realization that constantly showing up for someone who isn't meeting you halfway is draining your soul. And the moment you stop doing that, the moment you choose silence over struggle, you become powerful in a way that words can't describe. There is a kind of strength that grows in the quiet. The strength that says, I know who I am, I don't need to convince you. When you disappear, you remove yourself as an option. You stop making it easy. You stop filling in the gaps, and in that silence, something remarkable happens. You begin to see things clearly. You start to feel your own emotional space again. You realize how much noise you were tolerating just to keep a connection alive. You become aware of how much of your identity was wrapped up in being there for someone else, even when they weren't truly there for you. And as that awareness grows, so does your confidence. Disappearing isn't weakness. It's not avoidance. It's a reset. It sends a message without shouting. It says, I'm not playing small to fit into your comfort zone anymore. And whether the other person responds to it or not, you win. Because now you're standing in your worth, not chasing after validation. You no longer rely on someone else to reflect your value back to you. You've started to see it on your own, and that's when things begin to change. That's when people start to notice, not because you're trying to be noticed, but because you've become magnetic in your stillness. You've become someone they can't ignore, not because you're loud, but because your silence is charged with presence. The day you disappear is the day you reclaim your self-respect. It's the day you stop begging for crumbs and start building a feast within yourself. You're no longer the one who runs toward every sign of connection, hoping to be chosen. You are the one who pauses, who observes, who knows their worth. And when you show up like that, fully grounded in your power, people feel it. They feel your absence. They feel your shift. And most importantly, they feel the weight of who you are because you're no longer giving it away freely. You've pulled it back where it belongs with you. When you create space, you force reflection. Most people don't realize what they have while it's right in front of them. It's not because they're inherently ungrateful, but because comfort and familiarity breed complacency. When you're always available, always texting first, always solving the emotional distance between you, there's no pressure for the other person to look inward. Why would they? You're doing all the work for both of you. But the moment you step back and stop showing up in the same way, that comfort is interrupted. Suddenly, your voice isn't in their inbox, your energy isn't in their space, your emotional labor disappears, and they feel it. That space that used to be filled with you becomes a void, and in that silence, their thoughts get louder. That's when reflection begins. People reflect most when they're uncomfortable. It's human nature to process and evaluate when something feels missing. And your absence creates that missing piece. It's not about manipulation. It's about balance. Your consistent presence might have been comforting, but it also gave them no reason to question, no reason to act, no reason to grow. By stepping back, you allow the natural law of cause and effect to play out. You've removed the shield, and now they have to face the reality of what the relationship has become without your constant effort holding it up. And when there's nothing to distract them, no messages to ignore, no calls to dodge, they're finally left with their own thoughts, and those thoughts start to echo. Your silence becomes a mirror. It reflects back everything they didn't want to face before. How little they gave, how often they avoided vulnerability, how easily they expected you to carry the emotional weight. It's only in your absence that they begin to question themselves. Was she really doing that much? Did I even thank her? Why do I miss her voice now that it's gone? These questions don't show up when you're constantly around trying to prove your worth. They only arise when you've stepped out of the picture and let the silence speak. And here's the powerful part, that reflection can lead to transformation, not just in how they see you, but in how they see themselves. Sometimes it takes losing your emotional presence for someone to recognize how much value it brought into their life. And sometimes they have to feel the sting of your absence to start healing the parts of themselves they've been avoiding. You're not doing this to make them chase you. You're doing it because space is where clarity lives. It's where truth rises to the surface. When you step back, you're not just giving them space, you're giving them the opportunity to wake up. And whether they grow from it or not, you've already won, because you've stopped carrying the emotional weight alone. You've let space do the heavy lifting. When you stop chasing, you stop feeding the illusion that you need to earn love. The truth is, love that must be constantly pursued is not love. It's fear wearing a mask. It's the fear of not being good enough. It's the fear of abandonment. It's the fear that if you stop proving your worth, you'll be forgotten. But when you step out of that cycle, when you stop chasing and start choosing yourself, something radical shifts. You stop living in reaction to someone else's behavior and you begin to act from a place of self-worth. You reclaim your emotional independence, and with that independence comes a calm confidence that speaks louder than any words ever could. This change doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop exhausting yourself to maintain something one-sided. It means you stop investing energy into trying to control the outcome. The chase, at its core, is always about control, trying to shape how they feel, what they think, and how they act. But in reality, the only control you truly have is over yourself. When you stop chasing, you begin to center your life around your own joy, your own purpose, your own standards. You stop making someone else's validation the measure of your value. And in doing that, you become magnetic, not because you're trying to be, but because you're grounded in your truth. Most people are attracted to certainty. When you're chasing, you broadcast uncertainty. You send the message that you're willing to bend, break, and lose yourself for a connection. But when you stop chasing, you radiate certainty. You become the calm in the storm. You're no longer the one who's anxiously waiting for a reply, endlessly interpreting mixed signals, or trying to decode silence. You're the one who knows, if this isn't mutual, I won't force it. That inner peace is powerful. It's rare and people feel it, and here's what often happens when you stop chasing. The person you were chasing suddenly notices your absence, not because you were loud, but because your energy was constant, and now it's gone. They feel the shift, they feel your boundary, and in many cases they start to come forward. Why? Because the dynamic has changed. You're no longer giving more than you're receiving. You're no longer participating in emotional imbalance. And now, if they want your presence, they have to earn it. They have to rise to your level. They have to meet you where you are. When you stop chasing, you become a person who respects their own emotional currency. You no longer pour into empty wells. You no longer run after people who can't meet you with the same energy. Instead, you pause, you pull back, you let things reveal themselves, and in that stillness, you don't lose power, you gain it. Because the one who can walk away is the one who holds the real strength, and that strength is what makes you unforgettable. When you stop explaining yourself, defending your actions, or justifying your worth, something shifts in the dynamic. You stop overgiving and start preserving your energy. Constantly explaining yourself, seeking approval, or making someone understand your value is an exhausting loop. It not only drains you, but it also sends a subtle message that your worth depends on their acceptance. But when you go silent, when you let your actions speak louder than your words, you create a powerful energy shift. The silence becomes louder than any explanation could ever be. It forces the other person to fill in the blanks, to reflect, and most importantly, to feel the absence of your voice, your reassurance, and your presence. This isn't about playing games, it's about reclaiming your power. Words can be twisted, intentions can be misunderstood, but energy never lies. When you stop explaining, your boundaries become crystal clear. You communicate without saying a word that you're no longer available to be misunderstood, misused, or underestimated. You remove yourself from emotional negotiations. You stop trying to convince someone to value what they were already taking for granted, and in that silence, they begin to feel what they couldn't hear before: your worth, your presence, your contribution. It's in that space of non-reaction that real change begins, because the person who once relied on your emotional responses, your constant validation, your repeated explanations, they're now left with nothing but the echo of their own choices. They're confronted with their own behavior. They don't get to deflect or project anymore because you're not there to absorb it. Your silence becomes a mirror reflecting their treatment back to them. That's when self-awareness starts to develop. That's when they begin to wonder, did I push too far? Why did she stop talking? What did I miss? Those questions only arise in the absence of noise. By stopping the urge to explain, you also stop feeding dysfunction. Healthy connection doesn't require constant justification. It respects space. It listens without needing to be convinced. So when you pull back and go quiet, it's not passive, it's intentional. It's the kind of silence that speaks volumes. It says, I know who I am, I know what I bring to the table, and if you don't see it, I won't beg you to. That's not pride, that's self-respect, and that kind of energy doesn't chase, it attracts. This moment of non-explanation becomes a turning point. Because when someone finally realizes you've stopped trying, that's when they begin trying. They begin thinking, noticing, missing. They realize the steady stream of reassurance they took for granted is no longer there. And they start craving it, not because you manipulated the moment, but because you finally gave them the silence they needed to wake up. When you stop initiating conversations, invitations, and emotional labor, you shift the dynamic entirely. You're no longer the one carrying the connection on your shoulders. Often, when you're always the one reaching out first, planning everything, checking in, and making the effort to keep things going, the other person falls into the comfort of your consistency. They get used to your presence being a given. They stop appreciating the energy behind your efforts. But when you stop initiating, that illusion shatters. Your absence becomes noticeable. The silence grows louder. And suddenly, they're left wondering what changed. This shift creates space for them to realize how much of the connection was fueled by your presence. Sometimes it takes your absence for them to notice your value. That text that doesn't come, that call that doesn't ring, that plan that doesn't get made, it all starts to add up. At first, they may convince themselves it's just a phase, but as days go by and you still don't reach out, they begin to feel a void where your energy used to live. And in that void, something powerful starts to happen. They begin to step into responsibility. They start realizing that if they want the connection to continue, they have to initiate. It's in this space of inaction that clarity often arrives. If the connection was one-sided, your silence will reveal that. If it was mutual but imbalanced, your pause invites balance. And if it was real but undervalued, your pulling back sparks appreciation. In every scenario, your decision to stop initiating acts like a mirror. It reflects the truth of the relationship, and that truth becomes undeniable. It pushes the other person out of autopilot and forces them to ask real questions. Did I put in enough effort? Have I taken this person for granted? What can I do to reconnect? Stopping the initiation doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about yourself to not keep giving without reciprocity. You're choosing your peace over forcing a connection. You're saying, if this matters to you, I'll see it in your actions. And that's where empowerment lives. Not in withdrawing from pain, but in drawing a boundary rooted in self-respect. You no longer chase, you allow. You no longer pursue, you attract. You give space, and in that space, the other person must decide, step forward or stay silent. This isn't about testing someone, it's about trusting the process. If they value you, they'll reach out. If they miss your presence, they'll show up. And if they don't, that silence will be your answer. Either way, you win, because you've chosen to protect your energy, honor your worth, and stand firm in the belief that you should never have to beg for what's mutual. When you stop initiating, you stop negotiating your value. And that alone changes everything. When you stop reacting emotionally to everything they say or do, you reclaim a massive amount of power. Emotional reactions are often the fuel that keeps unhealthy dynamics alive. Every time you cry, plead, or get angry in response to inconsistency or manipulation, you're reinforcing the pattern. You're giving them access to your inner world without them earning it. You're telling them, even unintentionally, that they still have control over your state of mind. But when you begin to regulate your emotions, when you respond with calm, silence, or distance instead of drama, you shift the entire energy of the connection. This emotional detachment doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you now process your emotions without handing them over. You stop giving the other person the privilege of seeing you unravel for their attention. You deal with your feelings privately, from a place of grounded strength. And when you do that, they can feel the difference. They sense that you're no longer emotionally dependent on their validation, and that unsettles them. Why? Because they were used to controlling the rhythm, pulling away to make you chase, pushing buttons to make you react, staying distant knowing you'd eventually break the silence. But now, you're no longer reacting. You're observing, you're choosing peace over proving your pain. This shift forces them to sit with their own behavior without your emotional response to distract them. You're no longer rescuing them from accountability. You're not rushing in to fix things just to calm your own anxiety. You're letting them feel the consequences of how they show up, or fail to, and in that stillness, your strength becomes undeniable. They start asking themselves, why isn't she reacting? Why isn't she upset this time? What changed? And those questions begin to gnaw at them. They start to feel unsure, off balance, even uncomfortable, because your lack of reaction takes away the emotional leverage they once had. This emotional shift is also a sign of maturity. It says, I have nothing to prove. If you can't see my worth, I won't waste my energy trying to convince you. If you mistreat me, I won't scream, I'll step back. And when they see that you're no longer emotionally entangled, when you remain composed while they expect chaos, they start craving the emotional connection they once took for granted. It's ironic, but true. The less you react, the more impact you have. The silence becomes louder than any argument. The calm becomes more powerful than any outburst. When you stop reacting emotionally, you begin to embody the type of strength that makes people reflect. You're no longer playing the game. They're playing it alone. And in your silence, in your steady energy, they come face to face with the reality they've been avoiding. They lost access to something sacred. Your peace, your softness, your vulnerability, and by the time they realize it, your calm detachment will have already rewritten the rules of engagement. You won't be waiting at the door. They'll be the ones trying to find their way back in. Let's bring everything full circle now. When you stop giving all your energy, when you let go of the constant pursuit, the narrative changes. You've probably spent so much time trying to make someone understand your value, trying to fix what feels off, trying to hold the relationship together with sheer emotional effort. But that version of you, the one always giving, always trying, isn't the version that gets seen, respected, or remembered. It's when you choose stillness, when you pull your energy inward, that the true shift begins. People often don't realize what they have until your energy is no longer there to comfort, validate, or reassure them. It's the absence of your presence that speaks the loudest. The entire message here is not about playing games or manipulating someone into chasing you. It's about stepping into your power. When you stop showing up in ways that dishonor your worth, when you stop reacting to every breadcrumb with desperation, you begin to radiate a quiet strength. That strength doesn't scream, it simply is. And the moment they feel that silence, they also feel your value. They remember the way your energy felt, the care, the attention, the emotional presence. And when that's gone, it creates space for them to reflect. It forces them to reckon with their own behavior. Perhaps for the first time, you've learned through this journey that your energy is currency. Where you place it, how much you give, and to whom, it all determines how you're valued. When you stop giving energy to someone who isn't reciprocating it, you're not being cold, you're being clear, you're drawing a boundary, and boundaries are not walls that block love, they are the fences that protect your garden from being trampled. In pulling back, you're giving someone the opportunity to meet you halfway, and if they don't, you'll still be standing. Stronger, wiser, and with your dignity intact. We've explored how silence can make more noise than pleading ever could. We've uncovered how not initiating can speak volumes about your self-worth, and we've examined how emotional detachment doesn't mean apathy. It means choosing peace over emotional chaos. These principles are not just strategies to get someone back. They're ways to reconnect with yourself, because this isn't just about him missing you. This is about you no longer missing yourself. It's about realizing that the most magnetic thing you can do is focus on your own life so powerfully that others are drawn into your orbit, not because you chased them, but because you finally stopped. So as you move forward, remember this: pulling back isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the moment you decide that you are enough without having to prove it, and that realization alone will reshape every connection you ever build. People will start showing up, not because you begged, but because you stepped into your power. You've stopped pouring your energy into someone who didn't know what to do with it. Now it's time to pour it into yourself and watch how everything begins to change. Thank you for sharing this powerful space with me today. Your time, your energy, and your willingness to listen means more than words can express. The fact that you're here, seeking growth, clarity, and strength, tells me everything I need to know about your heart and your potential. You are not here by accident. You are on a journey of rising into your power, of reclaiming the energy you've been giving away so freely, and every step you take toward that truth is a victory. Remember, you don't need to chase what's meant for you. You don't have to beg to be seen, heard, or loved. When you stand in your value, when you stop overgiving and start honoring yourself, the right people will rise to meet you. The wrong ones will fade, and that's a gift, not a loss. Let your silence be sacred, let your peace be your loudest message, and let your energy flow where it's respected, not wasted. I want to thank you again for having the courage to choose yourself. Not everyone is ready to do that. But you are, and because of that, your future is about to shift in ways you never imagined. Hold your head high, keep your standards even higher, and never forget. Your presence is powerful, but your absence can be even louder. So until we meet again, stay grounded, stay focused, and most importantly, stay true to you. You are enough exactly as you are, and the more you own that, the more the world around you will respond accordingly. Take care of your heart, protect your energy, and always walk forward with purpose. Thank you, and goodbye for now. You've got this.